Hey everyone, my name is Chris A, and today I want to talk about the state of Tennessee. And the reason we're talking about Tennessee specifically is because over the past couple weeks, Tennessee has quickly become one of the most trans unfriendly states in the United States. For more information, I did a previous video on this general topic, anti-transgender legislation, but I did have a bigger scope. So that video included I believe it was 34 states that have introduced legislation like this. Today we're specifically looking at Tennessee. Real quick before we get started, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. You know the good stuff. So, like I mentioned, over the past couple weeks, Tennessee has quickly become one of the least trans-friendly states in the U.S. And we're going to look at a couple bills specifically that are contributing to this. Like many other states, the most popular type of anti-trans bill that we've seen this year has had to do with sports, and specifically sports at the K through 12 level. Tennessee, the governor signed a bill which prevents transgender athletes from participating in sports, basically. Like many of the other states, Tennessee's bill focused specifically on transgender girls. So it's preventing transgender girls from participating in sports on a girls' team in a public high school or middle school. Obviously, that's bad. Obviously, sports are good for everyone, and we shouldn't discriminate against transgender athletes simply because they are transgender. That's bad. Similarly, and this is one of the more dangerous bills, the governor of Tennessee has also signed a bill that prevents prepubescent minors from accessing any transgender healthcare. So this would be things like puberty blockers, which I mentioned this in a previous video. Puberty blockers have been available to children for decades now. Some children enter puberty too early, and puberty blockers it's one way to address that. If you start entering puberty and you also have gender dysphoria, you're going to be going through the wrong puberty, and taking puberty blockers until you're better able to handle that, or until you're able to take hormone replacement therapy, is better for the child and better for society in general. It can't be overstated that about 40% of transgender youth seriously consider suicide, and preventing them from getting health care, preventing them from playing sports with their friends at their school, obviously only contributes to more mental health issues, more depression, unfortunately more suicidal thoughts, and in some extreme cases, of course, suicide itself. So these kinds of laws will only make that problem worse. Preventing children from getting healthcare or from playing sports, obviously going to make those students' situations worse off. Tennessee has also signed a restroom bill specific to schools, public schools. This law basically allows a person to sue a public school or similar institution if they are caused damage or harm or distress or whatever from the thought of a transgender person using the bathroom. I'm reading this language from the Associated Press. It says, under the bathroom measure, a student, parent, or employee could sue in an effort to claim monetary damages, quote, for all psychological, emotional, and physical harm suffered, unquote, if school officials allow a transgender person into the bathroom or locker room when others are in there. So basically, if a transgender person happens to use the bathroom at the same time as you, what this law allows you to do is sue the school for psychological, emotional, and physical harm. Of course, that is very silly. If you suffer physical harm, there was probably an assault, in which case, obviously, there's going to be its own case. If you suffer psychological and emotional harm because you have to share the bathroom with someone who is transgender, that might be on you, certainly not on the school, and definitely not on the individual themselves, just for being transgender and using the bathroom. Obviously, this law is absurd and totally unfair. And what it does is it creates this incentive for schools to discriminate against transgender students or employees. It doesn't say outright that you cannot allow transgender people to use the bathroom, but what it does, it makes it so that someone who, probably doesn't have the best intentions can sue a school, again, a public education institute, simply for the crime of allowing transgender students to use the bathroom. Obviously, this is very bad. And what I want to get into specifically today is this new law that has been signed by the governor. And this is being called the first of its kind. And what it does, I'm just going to go ahead and read directly from the legislation itself. So here we've got a public or private entity or business that operates a building or facility open to the general public, and that, as a matter of formal or informal policy, allows a member of either biological sex to use any public restroom within the building or facility, shall post notice of the policy at the entrance of each public restroom and at each entrance of the building accessible by the general public. So what they're basically saying is that if you run a business and you do not discriminate against transgender customers when it comes to using the bathroom, basically you allow transgender women to use the women's room, transgender men to use the men's room, non-binary people can use whichever bathroom they're most comfortable with. You have to put a notice up at the bathrooms and at the entrance of the building. And I'm going to put up the notice here, hopefully. I tried to print it, but I'm a millennial, so I don't have a working printer. But basically, you have to have a red background with yellow text that says notice at the top. And then the sign itself is going to say, this facility maintains a policy of allowing the use of restrooms by either biological sex, regardless of the designation on the restroom. This doesn't apply to single occupancy bathrooms, whether they are unisex or not. This only applies if there is a multiple occupancy bathroom, meaning multiple stalls. This is also going to apply to locker rooms, shower facilities, dressing areas. I don't believe that this will have as much direct harm as something like preventing children from getting healthcare, obviously. But what you're going to see is you're going to see any business that does not discriminate against transgender people have to put this sign out front of their business. Obviously, we can get into the word games here. The signage itself talks about biological sex. As far as I can tell, this law doesn't define what that means. And of course, if we actually wanted to get into the science of it, is someone who was assigned male at birth but has fully undergone a medical transition, they are taking estrogen, they have had surgery, by many counts, they are female, even though they also might be partially male. You're getting into the problem of lawmakers who know very little about basic biology, let alone gender theory and anything, more advanced like that. You're getting those people who are writing these policies basically saying, if a transgender person can use the bathroom, you have to let the public know. Obviously this is scary stuff, and it's reminiscent of the, whites only kind of signs we saw during the Jim Crow era. Instead of the businesses that are discriminating having to post a policy, it's the businesses that don't discriminate. This law will take effect July 1st of this year. So about a month from the publication of this video. The good news is the Nashville district attorney has already come out and said that they won't enforce this law. So if there is a business that doesn't discriminate against transgender people and they don't post this very unusual sign, they will not be subject to any enforcement of the law. Which of course brings up the question, how would this law be enforced anyway? Because there are several layers of enforcement. So the first is you would need to find a business that doesn't discriminate against transgender people. That is either going to be an official policy, or more likely it's just, if you're a trans person, you can use the bathroom, in which case that's an informal policy. Then you would need to basically catch them allowing someone to do it if it's an informal policy, if it's not written down. And then you would need to verify that they don't have the signage. All that for what would essentially be a civil fine, I'm guessing. Something probably not too serious anyway. It's just a very weird law, and I think the main concern is that if Tennessee can do this, we might see it pop up in more states. And although the Tennessee legislation, it relies on some misinformed notion of what biological sex is, but we could definitely see in the future how this could be used by other states in more extreme ways. You know, I also think we can't ignore the fact that the United States has a serious mass shooting problem. And if you have businesses that are posting signs basically saying, we allow transgender customers here, I hate to say it, but does that make them less safe in the event of a hate crime? If you've got someone with a gun who's looking to go out and hurt transgender people, now we've got signs on each business telling us whether or not this is a place where transgender people are welcome. That could be a concern. So if you live in Tennessee, please reach out to your legislators. Not everyone in the legislature was on board with these bills, of course. So there are some reasonable legislators in Tennessee. Unfortunately, it seems like the majority of them are more concerned with this very, very weird, government overreach into business. I don't even know what problem this is supposed to solve. But if you do live in Tennessee, let your state lawmakers know that this is not acceptable. Call the governor, things like that. Participate in direct action, anything you can think of. And maybe you don't live in Tennessee. Maybe you live in a different state or even in a different country. Let me know. Comment down below where you live if you're comfortable doing that. Let me know, how your state or country is doing, or territory or province. Just let me know. I'm interested to hear from my viewers. How is your state doing? Are they being really mean to trans people? I hope not, but unfortunately, as you saw in this video, it's kind of fashionable to do so these days. So thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Post this around on Reddit, Discord, Facebook, wherever you see fit. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. We'll be right back.